Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How are you all doing? Hopefully you are protecting yourself from social media. Hello, Squee. Both of our cats just had a bunch of dental work, and they were given this slow-release opioid painkiller type thing that's slowly releases over 2 weeks, and so they are high as a kite and very friendly. So hello, Squee. Great episode today. This is Raleigh Pemberton, a.k.a. Cadence Weapon. If you don't know who Raleigh is, you should. But let me read his bio right now. Born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Raleigh began rapping as a teenager and released his first mixtape, Cadence Weapon is the Black Hand, at the age of 19. He released his first album, Breaking Kayfabe. I've always wondered, I don't watch wrestling. Is it Kayfabe? Kayfabe? Just a little later. And since then, he's released 4 more albums, all of which were nominated for Polaris Music Prizes, with his latest, Parallel Worlds, winning the award in 2021. It's well-deserved. Raleigh was also named as Edmonton's Poet Laureate, even though in this episode I do say Poet Laureate, from 2009 to 2011. And today, the day this comes out, the deluxe edition of Parallel Worlds is out via MNRK Music Group. I can't recommend Raleigh's stuff enough. I first heard his album when it came out back in 2005. I remember where I was in my shitty one-bedroom apartment in South Philly when I was going to grad school. That was around this time when I started listening to indie hip-hop. Because before, when I was growing up, I got into Beastie Boys and Tribe Called Quest and The Roots. And then from there, you start digging deeper. This is the early days of the internet. I found Jean Grey and Cadence Weapon and Bus Driver and a lot of other cool people. So this is great to finally get to talk to Raleigh. He's awesome. Talk about Edmonton, which he called weird. And then when I found out towards the end of the episode what his definition of weird was, I was very surprised. I thought he was going to say quirky, like Stars Hollow. And when you hear what he thinks the weirdness of Edmonton is, well, maybe unless you are from Edmonton or you know about it, you won't be surprised like I was. But this is great. And if you like this episode and you want to check out other episodes, what I like to do here in the beginning of the show is a little recommended. If you like my talk with Raleigh, maybe you like my talk with other people from the world of hip-hop. The aforementioned Jean Grey has been on the show before. Samus, Open Mike Eagle, No Can Do, tons of other people. Lingua Franca coming up soon. Her new album is brilliant. But if you like all that and you want to check out other episodes and you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that wherever you get podcasts from. I've been doing the show for 12 years. I've talked to hundreds of musicians and artists and performers and comedians and writers from all types of media. Also, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. And coming up, I have so many good episodes coming up. The aforementioned Lingua Franca, Frog Eyes, talking about Canadian musicians. Frog Eyes is coming up next week. Lennon Parham, wonderful improviser and actor. Ryan North, another Canadian comic writer. So stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Raleigh. This is my theory, is that if you are a chill person, if you are from the American South, if you are from a place where you're just kind of vibing, if that makes sense, you will like Los Angeles. And so this is the thing. I was trying to think of I don't think I've ever talked to anyone from Edmonton before.
Yeah.
And I'm in my mind, reading up about it last night, I was like, is that the quote unquote Midwest of Canada, technically?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. We call it the prairies up there, but it would be essentially the Midwest. It's a mix between, I want to say, Midwest and Deep South. Cause it's our Edmonton is Alberta is the oil center of Canada. So there's a lot of similarities between Houston or something. It has some of those vibes. But I would say the most similar city would be Denver.
Go on.
It's like a flyover place, but it also has like really like wonderful people and like interesting culture, but it's kind of like underrated, you know?
Well, sell me on it. What are the things that like, because when I think of Denver, I think of weed and I think of comedy, because there's a good I don't know if it still is. I think a lot of them migrated to Los Angeles at this point, but like, and I think of having to cook pasta at a different temperature. That's it. That's my knowledge of Denver.
Yeah, we don't have the elevation. Although I find I feel different when I'm there. Like I live in Toronto now, and when I used to live in Edmonton, now when I go back, I get like nosebleeds and stuff. Like it's like dry. It's very dry there. It doesn't like rain. It doesn't snow a ton. Like it's a weird place. Edmonton is my home. Like it's where my whole family's still out there. It's a very unique place. Lots of nature. That's a big thing there. We have like a beautiful river valley, and there's not a lot of. It's not super urban that way.
See, then you will like Los Angeles. You will enjoy. You will.
I love LA. I love LA. Like I love it, bro.
No. Okay, I mean, good for you.
Can I explain why?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it's like, first off, do you remember the Sunscreen song? You remember that?
No,
this was like a 90s one-hit wonder track where it's like a monologue over some kind of like trip-hop music. And the guy's like, live in New York until it makes you feel too hard. And then move to LA, but leave before it makes you too soft. Right? And I think that may be a thing. But I also feel like Toronto is like, this is the ultimate quote of Toronto by Steve Martin. Toronto is New York without all the stuff. Right? And, I've been living here since 2015, and it is quite boring in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of great people and like a lot of great artistic movements and stuff, but I feel like the city itself doesn't like want any of us to be here. It wishes it could just be like a bunch of condos, but like no people.
Yeah, that's Los Angeles now. That's what it's turning into. Mm-hmm. Like right across from our apartment, there's like, I mean, it's not just our apartment, but like everywhere on every block, they've demolished like a bunch of, all the houses look crappy anyway, because they were built in like 1952 and no one ever updated them. And so they look like they look exactly like they looked in I Love Lucy reruns when I was a kid. But like, it is turning into this desolate area where like a bunch of private equity has invested in building giant condos that no one can afford to live in. So I assume they're mostly tax write-offs. And just in the last, like it was, I mean, the homelessness problem has been just like, I don't have a good word, devastating just for a long time. But just in the last month even, it's even exploded to a degree that like before it was upsetting. And now it's just, I don't have a good adjective for just like so far beyond upsetting.
Yeah, devastating is a good word. I mean, like the last time I was in LA, like it's beyond anything I've ever seen. In Canada we have a social safety net that is supposed to prevent exactly that from happening, but we also have a lot of unhoused people in Vancouver and a lot in Toronto. In fact, there was a lot of encampments that people were building, that the city actually destroyed them and like forced everyone to leave and stuff. And it was just like there were a lot of protesters involved, and it was it didn't get the kind of ratings and media coverage that the current protesters are getting. I wonder why.
Yeah, it's interesting that the truckers are getting all the press, and yet There's a struggle going on here because there's a particularly shitty city council member named Mitch O'Farrell. Mm-hmm. And as a kind of like publicity stunt, there was a homeless encampment in Echo Park during the pandemic.
I saw it actually. Yeah, like I was like, whoa, I used to just like run around here, go for a jog, and I was like, oh damn, it's like a town.
Yeah, and so he brought in cops, like real stormtrooper Gestapo shit, and then like pushed them all out, and then put up this disgusting gating. Like, I think a lot of people seem to be either blind to or ignorant, or what's another word? Don't care. Apathetic about about the way that we kind of make the public aesthetic so disgusting looking. In order to hurt unhoused people and make it difficult for them to like sleep on benches. So they add all this like disgusting stuff to benches, and they add all this like this disgusting kind of wire fence around Echo Park to stop them.
There's a term for that. It's like an architectural term, but it's like a kind of like hostile design. Like it's like where think of how like they put up all the spikes so like pigeons can't be in like a natural environment, like. But then it's the same thing for people. Like this is the whole issue with unhoused people and like the police and cities trying to get rid of them, whatever. And it's like obviously this is their failure to prevent the condo speculation that's totally destroying cities all around North America and Europe or whatever. But it's also just about the concept of public space, right? Like, what is public space? Like, we're supposed to be able to just hang out in a park, and it asks nothing of you. This is something I learned reading that book, How to Do Nothing. It's a really good book. Check it out. But this idea of like how there's like actual public spaces, like just a park where like you don't have to buy anything to be there or whatever. And corporations and the government, they're trying to limit these spaces as much as possible. But then you have places like Times Square or like here in like Toronto, Yonge Dundas Square, where it's like, oh, it's all there. You're only publicly allowed to be there because you're being advertised to. Like, it's not like a true like public space. It's not like free. Like, if you aren't going to buy something, if you just stand there for too long, they'll be like, you have to leave. And I just feel like our society is becoming more spaces like that, like highly policed, surveilled, pseudo public space.
Yeah. I was thinking about this morning, actually, because I was reading something about the truckers, the protests in it's Ottawa, right?
Yeah, it's happening all over Canada now, though.
Oh, great. But like one of the things that they were saying was like, yeah, there's a lot of like, there are white supremacists that are part of this, but also part of the foundation for this happening in the first place was the last 40 years of kind of neoliberalism just crushing people to the point where now everyone's like fed up about everything and frustrated. So like the littlest imposition on them then sends people off into a fury. So there are a lot of shitty people involved, but there are also people who are just like kind of frustrated and out of their minds. And the idea of like everything being commodified, and the more everything's commodified, and the more that everyone who doesn't have enough money gets like pushed and crushed, they're spending more and more money on the surveillance state and on police in order to keep all the people being crushed in line. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the life we're living at the moment. Is the being crushed we're living in the trash compactor in Star Wars.
Yes. We're the human face with the boot on it. 1984. But yeah, no, that's super real because, a lot of people who live in Ottawa are, the police chief just resigned today, actually.
Oh, fun.
And people are really thinking, especially white people in Canada, thinking like, why are we paying for the police? They're only thinking this now because it's the first time the police have not been serving them. Right? And they're like, wait a minute, I thought I could just like weaponize the police whenever I wanted, and now they're not doing what I want. So hopefully that leads to more like defunding, redistributing these services. Like, honestly, like, we spend so much money on police in Canada and it's super unnecessary. And as you can see, they agree with these protesters, so they're not doing anything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always funny to watch I mean, funny in quotes, just so we're clear, but
Yeah.
funny to watch in America when like there are like white supremacist protesters doing stuff and watching the police protect them against nothing. Again, by the way, against nothing, against like people yelling at them.
Right.
Right. Whereas when it's anyone else, then the police, then the batons and the pepper spray and the guns come out.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just blatant now. Like, you know, it's just.
Is there something that, I don't know what adjective I want again. I don't mean it. I don't want to say enjoyable, but that's the first word that came to my mind. Is there something at least comforting maybe in the fact that the mask is off and that you're like, look, I'm not crazy. That like when I started reading Chomsky 20 years ago and I was like, oh, this is how stuff is. Okay. Oh, I understand now. That at least other people are like, oh, we see how it is. They may not care, but at least they see it. And I don't feel like insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to not feel like you're being like gaslit by like all of the world or something like 24 hours a day. I mean, that was the thing that really actually inspired me on my last record was, you know, after the George Floyd protests and everything and like just seeing people on TV, on the news actually responding and saying like, talking about microaggressions, you know, and like structural racism. Like this is the first time they admitted this shit exists. Right. And I'm like, I've been talking about this the whole time. So it made me just go harder on like those subjects and go be more overt about it in my record. And then now we're seeing like, it's just going even more extreme to the point where I'm like, you know, the Oracle. Like I told you.
So wait, how did you get radicalized? Was it in Edmonton? Was it when you went to college? Like what? At what point do you see the light?
I feel like for as long as I can remember, I was a lefty pinko nut job. But from a young age, for sure. Like I in college, I went to university in the States. Actually, I went to Hampton University in Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, which, you know, is like, you know, it's not an insanely liberal place. Like it was actually quite weird, very like military, like conservative. It was a HBCU. So it was like mostly black and it was like a lot of like black Republicans. Like I'd never seen this before. Like I was like, damn, this shit's fucking weird. But, while I was there, the African American Studies, course that I had was very influential to me. It's like the first time ever hearing any of this stuff like in a school setting. Cause like obviously in Canada, they pretend there's like no black people or there was no black history or anything like, and I've now my whole thing in my raps, I try and like, you know, bring up all this like black Canadian history, especially people who've been disenfranchised, different towns that existed. Like it's the same things that happen in America happen in Canada, but Canada is more passive aggressive. So they pretend it didn't happen, or they're like, oh no, sorry. You know, like, oh, sorry. I totally eradicated your people or whatever, you know, to the First Nations.
Yeah. Sorry. We murdered all of your children and buried them under a school.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Canada. But yeah. Whoopsie. Oops.
So wait, well, how do you, in Canada itself then, when all that stuff is hidden, how do you find any kind of like black consciousness in Canada? Or did you have to wait till you went to college?
Oh, well, I just had that just in my family, my immediate family. I had to learn all that from them. But it was just, it's honestly in the last few years that I learned more about like the black Canadian stuff, because they try and make it seem like, you know, our experience started with like, you know, Jamaicans immigrating here like in the 50s and 60s or whatever. Like it's, you know, I have ancestors in this community called Amber Valley that was disenfranchised, doesn't exist in Alberta, but it's like they were originally from Oklahoma and they were like some of the first black settlers in Canada. And I didn't know about this at all, even like within my own family until like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago or something, you know? It's just crazy, like how like it's just not in any of the history books, you know, which are just I would love to see like my old social studies textbook and see what they're actually talking about. Like I think it would be mind blowing. Because the thing is, also in Edmonton, they're having a lot of issues because they had a lot of people who were involved with residential schools who everything is named after them. Right? So it's like there's neighborhood like Oliver, you know, and I have a song, Oliver Square. And it's like, I didn't know who this person was really at the time I wrote it, but this person was a big advocate for residential schools. And now they've changed the area to Unity Square. And, you know, they're just like removing, you know, there's also like, Grandin Station and Grandin as a neighborhood. And this is another guy who's involved with this, who's like, you know, we gotta, you know, take the savage out of the you know, First Nations people or whatever.
Oh,
you know?
one of those guys.
Yeah. It's dark shit, but it's like, why are we naming everything after only these guys? You know, I mean, that kind of is, I'm trying to create like a new generation of, you know, Black history, Black Canadian history, stuff to kind of replace. I think they should name all the shit after me now. You know, it's like, you know, do a statue of me instead. I
mean, what, you were a poet laureate, right?
Yeah, poet laureate.
Jesus. Yeah. Why can't I talk this morning? So you're halfway there, right? You have the resume to have things named after you.
You know what? Actually, there is a statue that one of my poems is engraved into, and that I conceptualized. So it's not a statue of me, but maybe all that's right on deck.
That's 80% of the way there. Then.
Hell yeah.
So wait, how did learning this stuff, was it just like adding knowledge to your brain? This is a weird question. Was it just like, or did it refocus you in some way? Did it refocus your understanding of yourself in any way?
Well, you see, I did my own research. But yeah, actually it really did refocus my whole thing. Actually, the more I was, because here's the thing, I wasn't like formally being like, oh, I need to learn about Black Canadian history. I want to like write songs about this, whatever. But it just started happening organically where, you know, I was hearing more about Africville, you know, for instance, in like public consciousness in Canada. And then I started, I was commissioned to write an article because, you know, I do a bit of journalism too. And I wrote this article about a neighborhood that's like not far from where I live here in Toronto called Little Jamaica. And they're building an LRT, you know, light rail transit. And it's been taking, you know, decades. And it just keeps getting pushed back. And the whole time, all these Black businesses are closing because you can't even access any of these restaurants or anything in the area. It's just total construction mayhem. So I started writing an article about that. And then through that process, I started realizing like, wow, this is actually a cyclical issue that has happened all across Canada. And then I was looking at it happen all the time in New York, looking at stuff like in Syracuse, like anytime they were building like a part of your highway system, you know, they were like, let's get rid of this Black community. Like who cares, right? Even like building Times Square, not Times Square, Central Park.
Yeah.
It was Seneca Village was part of it, and they got rid of this entire community.
Yeah, booted everyone up to Harlem, and now Harlem is. My wife's from Harlem, and so when I think the last time we were back in New York, I was on the train platform on 125th, and it was just like, or 135th, and it was just white as far as I could see, and I was like,
wow, crazy.
Usually I was the only white person around, but wait, so but Edmonton is like primarily white, right?
Yeah, it was when I was growing up. It was very not diverse at all, but it's changing a lot. Like nowadays, there's actually a really big Somalian community there, and it's every time I go back, it's looking way more multicultural, and I'm like, wow, this is like tripping me the fuck out because when I was in school, like when I was in like elementary school, like junior high, like elementary school, I was the only Black kid in the entire school. Like literally not another soul. And then junior high, it was like 5 people who were Black, you know, like it was really extremely rare. Right. And so that was really weird, especially coming from that to going to like an HBCU and thinking, okay, this is going to be great, like cultural development and learn about my people and all that. But actually, it just made me feel like more of an outsider because a lot of the people that I was meeting happened to be, you know, Republicans or just like kind of jocks or really like not ideologically similar to me. You know, like oh yeah, that's the other thing I should tell you in college about becoming a lefty pinko nut job like I am today. I was in Amnesty International. I joined when I was in university, and I remember we went to Washington D.C. for this big event where Mumia was speaking via teleconference. Mm-hmm. You know, and just like being around like the organizing spirit, you know, at that age was definitely influential. You know.
So back in Edmonton, how do you react personally to like whiteness, like around you? Like, is it something I'm Jewish and I grew up in a very Christian area. And so my reaction to that was, I think it reinforced, I'm kind of a weird person in the first place. And I think it just kept reinforcing that, like, because it was very alienating there. And I wonder if your situation was analogous to mine in any way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for me, I have like a bit of a sense of comfort around white people. I think because I've been around them, I've had so much exposure to them over such a long period of time. But I mean, it's like definitely just for my sense of self, it was definitely really strange because I was othered all the time. I was always an outsider. And what I think that ended up causing was me to become the fly on the wall kind of perceptive personality, right?
Yep.
This is like what all my art is like I like to see things from other people's perspective and just kind of be on the outskirts and just kind of thinking about it, you know?
Yeah, 100%. That is exactly kind of how it formed my consciousness. Was there any kind of, this might just be me, but was there any kind of lack of confidence that came along with that? Like, it took me a while to become, I'm still working on in therapy, but like more confident about myself because I was othered like that. And I was kind of like alienated from, what everyone else is doing. I mean, like, just very quickly, like, I remember one time I was in karate class and the other karate students, like, for some reason, like, had everyone before class circle up and then they said like a Christian prayer and then crossed themselves. And I was like, and I like didn't want to like not participate. So I did a Star of David on myself in the same way. But like that kind of just like, we're like, I'm not part of this group. And I feel a little insecure now.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Like there was a long time where, you know, just being young in school, like I felt like I definitely didn't belong. Like I had I didn't really have like a community like that. Like only time I see black people is in my family or when I go to the barbershop, you know, like it was definitely very alienating, you know? And it was also another thing, like it took me a long time and also some therapy, to really realize that it's like, oh, I actually do have value and like my culture does have value because, you know, it wasn't really the way it is today. Now you have like, you know, it's like Black History Month is a bigger deal or whatever, or like, you know, just in the consciousness, in North America, there's a lot more like, you know, black culture and stuff than there was when I was growing up. And cause back then it was like the only thing that people had to compare me to would be like, Steve Urkel or something, or like, or Carlton, you know, it's just shit that was on TV, you know? So there's like only a couple of archetypes that you could be. It was either one of them or I'm like one of the Wu-Tang Clan, you know, and there's there's no gray area. There's no like variability between those things.
But like late 80s into the 90s was kind of like at least in America, was like this renaissance of black television, especially like sitcoms and stuff. You had Amen, you had Different World, you had Girlfriends and
Martin, you know.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Well, okay. That's the thing is we didn't really even have that in Canada though. We didn't have those channels. Like you had to have like a satellite to like watch BET and stuff. Like I only got that like later, like once we had access to those channels. You know, and also Canada is always just a little bit behind, on like most things, you know, like, you know, for instance, we're only now just kind of talking about, removing some of the like, COVID restrictions. And it's like in America, you guys are all like just going ape shit. Like it's just totally normal again, basically. Right. Like,
don't say you guys, by the way, don't lump me.
You Americans are all the same. No, I'm joking.
My wife and I did not. She's a stand-up, and she didn't even do a show for 6 weeks, and then she did her first show last week. We kept our masks on the entire time. She only took it off just to go on stage and then put it right back on afterwards. So don't lump us. I'm saying don't lump us in with the rest of these freaks.
Well, we want to be like you freaks. That's the thing is like Canadians that we see America as like Big Brother. You know, and it's like, it is really problematic because it prevents us from really having like our own true culture, right? So it's like, we're just like trying to bite you guys all the time.
Yeah. No, I talked to this Canadian comedian, Mark Little, like a year or two ago, and he was saying that like Canadian culture develops in, not opposition, but like as a reflection of American culture in some way.
Absolutely. And the other thing is like people in Canada, they don't respect you until the Americans do.
Yes. Yeah. Dave Foley, one of the kids in the hall, said that at one point where like they had to, or maybe it was Scott Thompson. One of the kids in the hall said that they had to move to LA to get any kind of respect.
Same for them. Same for Jim Carrey. Same for Mike Myers. Like it's countless. Like I almost want to like write a book about this phenomenon of like, you know, it's like the tall poppy syndrome. You know, people in Canada, they hate when somebody is popping. It's like they loathe it. And it's like, I've experienced that so much. And it's so much smaller than America. Like our population is like 37 million people for the whole country. You know, I'm pretty sure there's more people in California than there are in all of Canada. Picture it like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of crazy?
So wait, so then how do you personally like push through like the insecurity of being othered and the insecurity of like tall poppy syndrome and all this stuff? How do you push that? Because to me, you are a confident rapper, right? Like when I listen to your, you know, I've been listening to your music for, I don't know, 15, 20 years now, right? You are a confident person there. Is that just like a switch you turn on when you are making music, or like how, I mean, like what is it that allows you to be confident there?
Well, you know, I think it was that insecurity when I was younger. You know, I don't like feeling like that, you know, and it's like I did everything to fight against that, you know? So it's like, I feel like in music is when I'm most comfortable, you know, and it's like, I love when I'm on stage, it's like, I feel more normal performing than I do maybe like having a conversation. Like I think in my everyday conversation, like I'm kind of reserved person, actually. That's like my true personality. But, I think when I'm making music, it's like when I get to just kind of stretch out and become the superhero, you know? And it's like, I feel like I have the duality of both those sides in me. But I think as my music has gotten more successful, it's like the superhero person is more present.
You're able to integrate as in your regular life. You're able to kind of integrate those two parts of yourselves in a more fluid way.
Yes. Yeah. And also the thing about me is, you know, no matter what is happening, I always believed in myself. You know, it's like, I think I've gone through so many different like weird situations in the music industry and just like bad label deals and just all the kind of bullshit that comes along with it. And the whole time I always knew like I'd make it back, right? I always knew that like I had something to offer to the world, you know, and it's just like, I'm just insanely, self-possessed. Like I just am like that. And I'm just driven. And I think the first thing is like, if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will, you know? And it's like, I really believe in myself. Like, I think I could be the best rapper in the world, you know? And it's like, I think I'm fucking halfway there. Really. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I honestly, it's like back in the day, especially in Canada, that was very perceived as arrogance. You know, that was pretentious. Like, but it's like, wouldn't you like to feel like that? You know, like just feels so confident that you're like, fuck, man, like I can win a Polaris Prize. I know I can.
I've just recently, so I started out my life being very arrogant because I was a good student, and that's like that was my identity, was I was a good student, and my parents, you know, I got gold stars and pats on the head for being a good student, so I was wrapped up in that, and then I was like too arrogant, and so I pushed against that. And now I'm back to thinking like, especially living in LA where a lot of it is just the facade. It's just building a very pretty facade, even though the insides are dilapidated and rotting. And so I'm just like, well, I should just go into meetings and say, well, look, I'm the best writer you're ever going to see. And I'm like, why not? Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to like argue with me there? Or like, what do I care what they think? Either they buy into it or they don't. And if I project confidence like that, then like, I guess it can help me.
Well, I definitely think you should go in with that spirit, but maybe not with the verbalizing it in that way. Because that was the problem that I used to have is my arrogance was a little outsized where my skill level was. So I was like, okay, yeah, maybe you guys might be right. I am coming off like an asshole. That's fair. I think but this is the balance of being like a human being, right? It's like you have to have a good balance of ego. Like I love that Tribe Called Quest song, Ego. Brilliant. You need your ego sometimes, right? But it's like the whole idea is like the ego like will make, you become this crazy athlete because everyone said you were small or whatever. Like such a clever song. But yeah, you need your ego. You need a little ego and a lot of humility. And you gotta like know how to take an L. That's something I learned, man. Like, because you're gonna get knocked down so many times, and it's like I know lots of people who couldn't get back up, and that's the thing. It's like so many of my peers back in the day, they got a fucking food truck nowadays, like they don't make tunes, and maybe it's a good food truck, but it probably isn't.
You don't know that. Go try it. Go try their
need to
French
go to
fries.
I gotta go to the food truck.
But what happened when you were younger that allowed you to take a loss and get back up?
I mean, I feel like maybe in the early part of my career, I had a lot of success very quickly. Like in Canada, I was suddenly like on TV, like on Much Music, like my videos were getting played. Like I was becoming like pretty well known, and I was still like a teen. Right? Like I was like almost like a child actor or something, right?
Yeah. Like when your first album was out, you were like, what, 19, 18?
Like, my first album came out in 2005 and I was like 19 when it came out, but I like made it like I was 17 years old, when I was like writing and recording it. But yeah, so like I had like all this great success for a while and like I was like enjoying it. I was like, damn, yeah, I am the shit. Everyone agrees. And then, my second album came out, wasn't received as well. And then I had like a huge gap in between my second and third album. My label that I was on, weird things started happening. And eventually they just like stopped like responding to me. Like my managers and my label just stopped answering my emails. And like I didn't put out an album for like 6 years. And in that time I was like, damn, I'm down bad. And it's like once you hit rock bottom, that, and you see what it is, and you realize that it didn't kill me. It didn't kill you.
Yes.
I didn't die, right? Like, it's that loss, total loss of ego, where I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll just like be a writer or something. Like I wasn't able to like get away from like the label situation I was in. And I had very low self-confidence for a while. But then I was just like, I know I have something to say. I know I have like more music left in me. I know people are interested. Like I have fans. Like why give up? And that was like kind of where it started. That would have been like, I don't know, 2013 or something, where I really started going harder and trying to turn things around.
What let you dig down deep and do that, as opposed to like, I think about Weezer a lot, where like the second album, which I really like a lot, but like it wasn't as well received, and I think it crushed Rivers Cuomo. And then he refused to go inwards, it seems, and just decided to like, I'm just going to make fun pop songs for people that have no meaningful content to them and no deep emotions to them. Whereas it seems like you went the other way.
That's exactly right. And I think that kind of, that kind of failure, it can change you and it can change your process and make you want to get away from the pain point, right? But for me, I never really made music for an audience. That was the whole thing. It's like I never was like, the first album I made is just like some noise rap, like weird music. Like no one's ever done any shit like that before. So I was like, yeah, it's just a real clear expression of my personality, right? And on the next record, I was like, I want to make house music. I want to make club music and rap over it. And it's like, you're not up on it yet. I feel like the music stands up, but I was just like, whatever. I'll just like, I like to zig when people think I'm going to zag. I'll never do the same thing over and over again. I find that very tiresome and pointless. And it's like, 'cause I'm the artist. It's my fucking decision. Like, it's like, I don't let the fucking market determine what I'm going to do ever. I'm never like that. Like, I know my label would like probably be really stoked if I just made an album exactly like this successful album I just made. Right. But I'm not going to. And I'll be happier for it. I mean, I follow my own muse, and I think I always did. And I think that was why I was I never like bottomed out and just like quit, was because like there's all just stuff I want to explore still, like the adventure of making music, it just draws me in. And it's not about like, oh, am I going to sell a bunch of records, or like, are people going to like it? Is the press going to like it? It's like, once you start thinking like that, it stops becoming a pure expression,
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that I had to like fight that when we moved out to Los Angeles, and I started to consciously create things that I thought could sell as opposed to things that were exciting to me. Mm-hmm. And I had to like, it didn't last, that phase didn't last too long, but I had to like consciously fight against it. I had to like recognize it in the moment. Like, again, thank you, therapy, for teaching me to recognize my emotions in the moment. But I'm like, no, just make the stuff that you like. I mean, we're like not wealthy, but like we're okay with rent and groceries and stuff like that. So I don't have to like pander like that.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of freedom in that, when you get to that point. I kind of did that too, like, on my album before the last one, the self-titled album in 2018. That was when I was like, early in my time living in Toronto, and the cost of living is so high here, and that I was so determined to have something that people would like for really the first time. Like, I was just like, I can't miss on this one, and it resulted in an album that I think is maybe more commercial than anything else that I've made. Mm-hmm. And I think it wasn't received as well as like people usually receive my music. But I don't regret doing that, because it was just like the right thing for me to do at that time. And it was like kind of the mood I was in. Like, I was just obsessed with like trying to stay in Toronto, and I was just like, how am I going to be able to do that?
I mean, what economic class did you grow up in? Your dad was a DJ, right?
Yeah, my dad was like a DJ, but he was also, he used to sell weed and like do like odd jobs and stuff. Like, my mom was a secretary, usually at like law firms and stuff. So I was firmly like working class, like, yeah.
I find it interesting, the intersection between class and creativity, especially in such a highly commercialized city as Los Angeles, where like everything is commodified when you're making something. Mm-hmm. And that like some interesting stuff happens. I don't know. I don't have a graph. I don't have a good like picture in my mind, but there's definitely this kind of thing where like interesting stuff happens before a certain income level. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes really uninteresting as you try to maintain that level. And then when you have no worries left, you can maybe make interesting stuff again.
Yes.
And there's this middle level where you're like trying to maintain a lifestyle where you are stuck in some kind of like commercial mentality.
Absolutely. No, that's why rich people can't make anything good. It's like, listen to some of these rappers, the richer they are, the whacker it gets. Yeah. And it's because partly is you have to have a certain mind state to like make really like good art, like I think there needs to be like something to prove, or like some kind of hunger to it, Yeah. Well, cause when that's gone, it's kind of like, you're just kind of, to me, and there's a few rappers I'm thinking of, who embody this.
Uh-huh.
It feels like it's just a part of their portfolio, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm due to release another bunch of investment nodes. That's what they probably think songs are, right? Like, it's not like music, really. It's just how many streams can I get per track or whatever, you know?
Lyrical NFTs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Fun non-fungible tunes.
I think about that 30 Rock joke where Tracy Jordan has been so out of touch because he's so wealthy and he's doing stand-up again, and all his stand-up is like, on St. Bart's they eat lobster like this. Num, 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 num. And he and that to me typifies that kind of mentality.
That's totally true. That's literally like Dave Chappelle now. He's just
yes.
He's like totally out of touch with the common person.
Oh, yes. That's what we've thought about him. Like, that was our big thing. Was beyond the transphobia and everything. It's that's like, oh yeah, he's totally out of touch. He's in his like Cosby pull up your pants phase.
Yeah, he's fucking washed. Yeah, you hate to see it, you know, because he had some good shit back in the day, but it comes for us all, you know, and some sooner than others.
Yeah, I have thought, like, in the, you know, I don't know if it'll happen for me, but definitely my wife could become very famous, right?
Yeah.
And so we think a lot about, like, well, how do we protect ourselves against becoming a shithead? And, like, what can we do to stop ourselves from turning into shitty people and specifically shitty creative people too?
Yeah, because it's like that. I feel like it's very toxic to be a shitty artist, because it's like you're just creating garbage, right? And it's like life is already hard enough. You know, the environment is like fucking destroyed. It's like you can't put out records that are whack. They're just going to clog up the fucking garbage dump. You know, like, I think it's like we have a actual imperative to make good art, you know, especially like with the carbon footprint of the average musician or artist or whatever. Like, come on, like, make this worth it, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like we have a responsibility, you know? It's like, I fucking hate whack music, man, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
You know, but I really hate it, because it's like, you know, when I listen to like something that's like bloated rap album, you know, it's like, I can't believe you made me sit through this. This is so selfish. This whole enterprise is so selfish. You know, like, you made these people make this shit with you, and you made us all listen to it. And then you're going to go on TV. I can't escape it for the week you're fucking putting it out. Like, yeah, I hate it. I hate whack music.
Yeah. Well, on all of that stuff, whether it's music or films or whatever, you can smell the commodification wafting off of it. You can smell just the, like, this was made to make money and not from any like real creative impulse. And
absolutely.
And maybe I'm just attuned. Maybe my antenna's up. Again, I put a lot of stock in being othered as a kid. That made me observant. And that if, like, because I think Jews in major metropolitan areas don't have this, because there's enough other there's so many other Jews around that you don't ever get that kind of like othered consciousness. Whereas, like, if you're from like Pennsylvania or Ohio or wherever, right, you gain that because you are not part of the in group. And so I could have turned out shitty. But like, I put a lot of stock in that, in making me observant about these things. And so maybe it is that I just can smell and maybe, you know, whatever, the stuff I've read has given me some kind of like consciousness where I can smell it wafting off. But
absolutely. Or maybe it's just you, you know, like maybe it's just you. Like, that's the other thing, is like, if you have a really good sense of yourself, that is like your artistic center, you know, and it's like, everything works in concert with that center that you've built for yourself. That's how I always, like, I can't be shaken, like, by trends or like changes in the industry or just like what's cool now. Like, I've seen so much shit come and go, you know, and it's like, I never attach myself too closely to any particular scene or like sound or whatever. Like, it's like, I'm constantly mutable. You know, I'm a Pisces. You know,
Hey,
I'm always flowing. Nice.
But wait, okay, so you have a lot of integrity. Was that instilled in you when you were younger? Like, did you see that in your parents? And just as a sub question, did they instill any kind of specific morality in you?
Interesting. I think, my parents, I think when it comes to artistry, they definitely influenced me because they would talk about, they love music, right? And like, we were always playing music in the house, and they have like, this thing they would say is like, oh, that music, that's some la la. Any music where it was just like la 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 la, kind of like, with bullshit lyrics and it's like meaningless music, like, we frowned upon that in the household, or like they had very strong opinions about music, like my dad being from New York, he was just like, this is a Biggie household. We don't listen to Tupac here, Like it was just, they were just really passionate about that kind of thing. But when it comes to like morality, that, my family, we're all good people, but I think that wasn't like something that was paramount or whatever. Like I know, my family, we call ourselves the Pimber Fools, because, we're not great with money. And it runs in the family. And we, it's like, when I won Polaris, it's like my mom's kind of like, so what are you going to spend the money on? And I was like, no, I'm saving it.
Wait, your dad's from New York, like born in New York?
Yeah. He's from upstate New York.
How did he end up in Edmonton?
He married my mom.
How did he meet her then?
They met in university in the States at an HBCU called Shaw University.
Where in upstate New York?
Oh, yeah, well, that place. He was from Port Chester.
Yeah, I know Port Chester.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, was that a shock for him to move to Canada?
Yeah. It was definitely a huge culture shock. But he just like brought the culture with him. And I think he changed Edmonton a lot for the better. Like he was a radio DJ, and he was the first person to play rap music on the radio. He had a very popular show called The Black Experience and Sound. And he would just play like funk and soul and R&B. Like he was just this multi-format DJ before it was a thing. Like where he would open up his shows with 2001 Space Odyssey theme. And then he'd like play like New York State of Mind by Nas. And then he'd be playing like Phyllis Hyman, and he was just random. He'd play like Jimi Hendrix. Like he's just like a wild guy, And I think, at first I think it was really weird for him to come to like a super white place like Edmonton was back then. But I think he really got a kick out of how he was received, because people were always like, oh, Teddy is the coolest person. He got to be like the coolest person in town. He was like a walking kind of like legend.
So do you grow up idolizing him, like wanting to be him?
No, actually what ended up happening was it would be like kids in my school would like be friends with me just to like hang out with my dad, to like come over to the house and like be around my dad. It was really annoying, actually. And it's like, I do find like I do take after my dad in a lot of things, obviously with the music stuff. But I think he was very extroverted to the point where he was like the life of the party and like blah, blah, very like loud, like talkative person. And it's like, I think it kind of made me who I am today, where I was like, I'm a very like insular, like contemplative individual, So I was very shy as a child.
Do you know if that was like a conscious thing, or was it just like the natural, like being in the gravity of someone who is such an extrovert, you kind of naturally gravitated towards being shyer, or were you just like, I don't want to be like that, and so I'm just gonna like be quiet?
Well, no, I think it was just a natural like reaction to it. But it was like, I loved my dad. I thought my dad was really cool and everything, but it was like, I also didn't feel like I was like him, like we weren't the same. Like I was just, just a shy little guy, just trying to do my thing.
Is your mom also extroverted?
No, she's like just a very loving, kind, person. She's a big music lover as well. She has one of those, signs in her living room that is like music in cursive. Like it's like one of those things you can only get at like a craft store.
Yeah. Like etched into like a plank of wood or something.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So beyond being like a musical household, were you introduced like through your dad into the business of this stuff at all?
Oh, not at all. No, because he was not really in the industry like that. Like he was just on a college radio station, and it was before like he passed away when I was a kid, when I was like graduated from high school.
Oh,
and he barely had heard me rap by that time, you know. And I feel like in a weird way, is like him passing away is like gave me an opportunity to kind of be my own person or something, you know. Like it was like I felt like maybe I was in the shadow of him for a long time, and like that's definitely something I've talked about in therapy. But yeah, I think that's definitely a thing.
Yeah, I thought about that. About like the older you are, if your parents are still alive, you are still a child in some way, and that is part of your identity. Mm-hmm. Not that it's a good thing for a parent to pass away, but like in some way it changes. I think in general, it changes a person in which it like you no longer have child as your identity.
Yeah.
And now you have to be an adult because there's no other choice.
Yeah. And I think from that point I became like just furiously independent, you know, and just like, you know, I not long after that, that's when I went to university, and then like I dropped out of school to like be a rapper, and you know, I ended up just moving in with some friends, and it was just kind of like my life was just like that from that point on, you know?
Yeah. Again, I'm not saying this was a good thing, but do you think that your father passing away like contributed to giving you some kind of like confidence that you didn't have before?
Yes, absolutely. Like, you know, obviously it's not good that my dad died, but it's like, I wonder if I would have even released music if he was alive, you know, because like I always like wanted his approval and stuff, and he was always kind of he was not a very like emotionally intelligent person, you know, like he wasn't of our time. You know, it was like a thing where he was like still like yelling at us all the time, and just a kind of old school parenting style that wouldn't be okay today, you know. And it's just kind of like, you know, I always felt like he, you know, wished I was like a different son or something. Like I wasn't like what he thought I was going to be or something, you know. But it's like, you know, like his old friends from like New York, like they'll hit me up and be like, he would have been so proud of you right now. Like, you know, because I'm kind of like doing what he always wished he would do, because he used to write songs too, but just like they were like very cheesy R&B songs. And for like my mom, like they were just like kind of like love songs, like he's writing on like a yellow like legal paper, you know, like but like and he loved music, but I actually got to make records, you know.
Yeah. By the way, I've been talking about grief in therapy lately, so this is why I've thought about all this kind of stuff.
Hell yeah, man.
Before we go, I just wanted to ask, you said earlier that like Edmonton was weird. And I kind of wanted to follow up on that. Like, what were the ways in which growing up in Edmonton, both it was weird and then maybe that weirdness got in you?
Oh yeah. I'm definitely a product of my environment, you know, because it's like it's a lot of the stuff I was writing about in my first album is like hanging out at the mall and, you know, ending up at like a house party in the North End where, you know, two women get into a huge fist fight and they're both like, it's a gang initiation to like join the Bloods. And it's Edmonton? Like, yes. And someone gets a hot poker out of the fireplace and brands one of them on their ass with a letter B. Why did that, you know, like, you know, that's something I saw. Right. You know, it felt like any kind of like house party situation. When I was in like high school or something, there was always something like really bad happened. You know, like it was like just, I don't know why I even went to them, because they were always like, another example is like kids used to go and rob whoever's house it was, you know, like it was just so much, Edmonton was like a rough town. It's just like kind of like, it's just a hard scrabble place, you know, and I think, you know, that still is in me, that kind of like pirate mentality or something. Like it's just like a rough place. Like I've seen you know, you'd be at a house party and then like rival gangs come and are fighting on the lawn in like this kind of suburban neighborhood, but they're fighting with like machetes.
What?
Yeah. Like that. I literally have seen that, you know, the shit I've seen, you know, it's crazy.
How do you react to that? Like emotionally, because I think we have similar kind of like emotional skeletons. And I remember like anytime that I was somewhat shy and introverted a little bit, but like anytime I saw like real life, like I remember at a party seeing like people do coke and like freaking out because I'm like, I only saw people do that on television, and to see it in real life was like jarring in the same way that like I assume seeing someone like fight with machetes in real life would be like,
oh man, like
jarring and saddening.
It's just like, that's why I kind of get like a kinship with Denver or something. Like, it's just like, it's like awesome, like Breaking Bad shit. Like I know kids who did meth, you know, like it's just, and you know, it's like the kind of like dusty raver culture is like still there, you know, like it's just like kind of a gnarly place, you know, but it's also really beautiful in the summer, you know, It's like got beautiful nature. Everyone is super friendly, like great people there, you know, like I have so many great friends from there, and just like your average person is a good person in Edmonton, you know, and it's like, I feel like there's a lot of people there who feel like they are, unappreciated, you know, like there's a lot of like DIY spirit. Like there's a huge, like kind of indie scene that like I was involved with when I was living there. And like, just a lot of people like no one within Canada. Like I remember when I would first go to Toronto, and I'd be like, hey, like, oh, like, they'd be like, where are you from? And like, I'd be like, I'm from Edmonton. And they'd be like, where's that? And it's like one of the major capital cities of our country. But, you know, that's how big the separation between Canada can be. You know, it's just so far. You know, it's just weird.
Is there like, I mean, is there oil money around? Because like you said, it was kind of like Texas-y. And I know like, aren't the tar sands over there somewhere?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's the tar sands, that dirty oil.
Yeah.
That like nobody wants.
Yeah. So, okay. So it's less Texas-y and more like fracky, Midwest-y type.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say Calgary is a place that is like more like Houston. It's where like the people who like own the oil rigs live. And there's like a lot of money there. Whereas like Edmonton is kind of like where like the people who work on the rigs lives. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, it's more of like a working class, like hard scrabble, like tough, like truck driving, you know, hard drinking, boot scooting, boogieing kind of place.
Okay, so last question then. Do you think growing up, because this is the way I was, were you like alienated from your emotions kind of? Because again, seeing stuff like people fight with machetes, if that doesn't like, if you're not alienated from your emotions, I can imagine it being like kind of crushing you to see like that kind of like fucked up stuff in real life. And it was only through like therapy that I kind of started to get in touch with my emotions. Like they were there all the time. It wasn't like I was repressing them, but I was definitely alienated from them. And I'm kind of curious if that was your kind of situation too.
Well, I think the thing with me is I've always been an extremely emotional person. Like I used to cry a lot as a child.
Yeah.
You know, like I was just super like very emo person. Yeah. We were probably listening to Pinkerton at the same time. You know, like I feel that. But yeah, I think, you know, going through like seeing so much trauma like that, you know, it was just like all the time. And it was just like, I live basically downtown all the time. And the shit that's happened to me, like, you know, like going under some scaffolding and like a guy like pulling out a gun and say like, give me some money or I'll blow your fucking head off. Like it's happened to me, you know, it's like, yeah, definitely therapy helped out with a lot of this stuff. But I think my ultimate therapy was just writing music. You know, that was like my expression, is my poetry. It was like where I could kind of escape from my environment, which was like just a very like strange, like rough ass town, you know? And it's like that young person who was going through all that stuff is still in me. And it's really where I think, you know, I try to ground everything I do in empathy. You know, it's like, you know, even these truckers and this convoy and shit, like I can't help but, you know, I want to like see their side of it and try not to be overly judgmental.
Yeah. It's tough. I try to.
It's hard. It's hard because
really
it's hard because lots of them are Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't. I don't really have empathy for them, but you know, I understand. Yeah, everyone is tired of the restrictions. Blah blah blah. You know, like whatever. I feel.
Yeah. If there's one takeaway from this, it is tough to empathize with a Nazi.
Hard not to punch.
True. Yeah. Raleigh, thank you. What a delight to talk to you for this last hour.
Man. Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.